He had everything the world could offer. Yet, in the silence of the snow-dusted garden, the Earl of Hawthorne wept alone, until a little voice whispered, a promise that no wealth, no title, could ever grant. "Don't cry, sir. You can have my mama." Snow fell over Winterfell Hall, the way soft music falls into a quiet room, slowly, gently, and with a kind of holy insistence that could not be ignored. Each flake drifted down like a memory, catching in the lantern glow, melting on the stone steps where Clara Harrow stood waiting. She had not intended to wait. A mere companion did not stand at the entrance for returning nobility. But the moment word spread through the household that the Earl was arriving tonight, Clara had felt a strange, trembling pull toward the front hall, the exact same place she'd stood 5 years ago when he had left. Back then she was only 19, hopeful, foolish, filled with a quiet affection she never dared speak. Now she was 24, wiser, calmer, neatly built of composure and rules. And yet her heartbeat had not received the message. Torchlight flickered across the courtyard as the carriage finally appeared, its wheels crunching through the snow. The horse's breath misted into the air like small ghosts. A footman hurried forward, lamp swaying in his hands. Clara tightened her shawl around her shoulders. Her breath fogged the cold air. Her fingers shook. Elias Blackthorne is returning. The name alone stirred warmth and ache all at once. The carriage door opened. He stepped out, tall, broad, shouldered, wrapped in a dark traveling cloak dusted with snow. But it was his face that struck her, familiar yet changed. His jaw was stronger, his cheekbones sharper, and a faint scar curved along the side of his face, disappearing into his hairline. And his eyes, those same storm, gray eyes, once bright with laughter, now carried a shadowed depth she did not recognize. He paused, as though surprised to see her. The snow captured the silence between them. "Miss Harrow." His voice was deeper, quieter, careful. He inclined his head with a respectful bow. Clara curtsied, though her knees barely obeyed. "My lord, welcome home." Home. The word felt fragile on her tongue. For a heartbeat, his gaze softened, a flicker of something real, something almost painful. "I have been away too long," he murmured. His breath formed pale clouds in the icy air, but the sound of his voice sent warmth rolling through her chest, in a way she was not prepared to endure. They walked inside together. He kept a gentlemanly distance, but she could feel the warmth of him, and the weight of something unspoken, like a second coat, over her shoulders. Winterfell Hall greeted them with flickering candle sconces, evergreen garlands draped over the banisters, and the soft rustle of Christmas preparations. The house smelled of pine wood, cinnamon, and the faint perfume of polished brass. But beneath that festive warmth, Clara sensed something else, a hush, a waiting, as if the very walls of Winterfell held their breath for the return of its heir. Lady Eloise, his younger sister, swept down the staircase with delighted laughter. "Elias, you wretched creature, you said you would come a week ago." He smiled faintly, just enough for Clara to recognize the boy he once was. "The roads disagreed with my plans." Eloise threw her arms around him, and Clara stepped aside, smoothing the front of her gown to steady herself. Watching them reunited stirred a pulse of homesickness, not for a place, but for a feeling she once associated with him. When his gaze drifted to her again, Eloise caught it instantly. "Oh, good heavens," Eloise teased. "I swear he recognized you before he recognized me." "Elias, don't stand there brooding like a winter ghost. Say something pleasant to poor Clara." He cleared his throat. "Yes, well, Miss Harrow looks well." Clara offered a polite smile. "As do you, my lord." But she felt her cheeks warm. He did not look well, not truly. He looked exhausted, travel, worn, haunted, as though he carried winter inside him. Later that night, long after the household retired, Clara found herself wandering. The corridors were dimly lit, the air softly scented with wax and pine. She meant only to retrieve a book from the library, but as soon as she entered, she froze. Elias was already there. He stood near the fire, coat removed, sleeves slightly rolled. His posture was tense, yet his face was strangely open, as though the solitude allowed him to shed the armor he wore during daylight. He looked up when she stepped in. "Unable to sleep?" he asked. His tone was gentle, almost warm, a quiet ember beneath ashes. "The snow keeps me awake." she said, forcing a small smile. It is very loud tonight. It is, he agreed, returning his gaze to the flames. Winterfell always grows restless before Christmas. She tilted her head. Restless, he hesitated. I suppose homes grow hungry for their people, he exhaled softly. Or I am merely feeling sentimental. Clara approached slowly, every step measured. My lord, she said quietly, does Christmas trouble you? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, he said at last. The truth of it sank between them like a stone into water. Clara's breath stilled. Not the season, not the snow, not the memories. Christmas itself troubled him. Elias. The name slipped out before she could stop it. Too familiar, too close to the girl she used to be. His head snapped up. She flushed crimson. Forgive me, I meant. Number, his voice softened. It is good to hear my name spoken without ceremony. The fire cracked. Outside, the wind howled against the tall windows like an ancient song. Clara felt her heartbeat echo inside her chest. She should leave. She should not remain alone with him at such an hour. But she also could not move. His expression shifted. A flicker of pain, quickly hidden. There are matters I must set right while I am here, he murmured. Things I left undone and unsaid. Her breath caught. He turned away abruptly, rubbing the scar on his jaw. It is late. You should rest. She swallowed the sting of dismissal. Of course. She reached the doorway before his voice stopped her. Clara. She looked back. He stood in the glow of the fire, eyes shadowed, shoulders burdened by something she could not yet understand. Do not fear the winter, he said softly. Winter always brings revelation. Clara's throat tightened. When she returned to her chamber, she realized she was trembling. Not from cold, but from something infinitely more dangerous. Hope. The following morning, Winterfell Hall glowed under a pale winter sun, silvering the frost. Covered gardens and dusting the gravel paths in white. Inside, the house smelled of pine, baking bread, and beeswax, the comforting aromas of holiday preparations. Yet Clara Harrow could not find comfort. Her thoughts were tangled in the threads of last night's encounter. Elias Blackthorne returned, yet different. Not just older, hardened by years away, but carrying a shadow she could not name. A weight she felt pressing in the air when he was near. She had resolved to avoid him, to keep to polite distance and courteous conversation. Yet, as she descended the grand staircase toward the dining hall, the sound of a deep voice halted her. It has been far too long, Elias said, speaking to no one in particular. The words carried a weight, a melancholy, as if even time itself hesitated in the hall. Clara's steps faltered. She caught her reflection in the polished banister, the pale pink flush of winter, the soft curl of her hair escaping the pins, and the nerves she could not conceal. He turned suddenly, gray eyes catching hers across the hall. For a heartbeat, they stood still, strangers and old companions, caught in the liminal space between memory and reality. Miss Harrow, he said, bowing slightly, though his eyes betrayed a curiosity that bordered on something more intimate. Good morning, my lord, she replied, voice calm, though her heart betrayed her. Breakfast was a quiet affair. Servants moved with practiced efficiency, carrying trays of porridge, honeyed rolls, and steaming tea. The hall was adorned with garlands of holly and evergreens, candles flickering in brass holders. Yet, Clara noticed Elias scarcely touched his meal, his gaze drifting to the snow-laden grounds outside. Finally, he spoke, quieter than one might expect in such a hall. You used to love the winter garden, he observed. Clara's hand paused mid-lift of her teacup. I do, she said carefully, though it has been some years since I wandered there in the snow. Years, he echoed as though tasting the word, and yet some things remain, certain memories. Clara's heart skipped. Memories, he remembers. She had feared he might have forgotten. The laughter, the stolen glances, the afternoons spent beneath the arbor, watching the frost paint delicate patterns on the windows. She managed a polite nod, hiding the flutter in her chest. After breakfast, she wandered to the library under the pretense of retrieving a book, but Elias was already there, standing beside the large fireplace, hands clasped behind him, staring at a portrait of his late father. Good morning, she said softly. trying not to startle him. He did not turn immediately. When he did, his expression softened. A shadow of the boy she had known, yet layered with the man he had become. "Good morning," he replied. His voice carried a strange weight, as though each word was considered before release. Clara approached, keeping a careful distance, her fingers brushing the spine of the book she had come for. "You have grown," he said suddenly. Not unkindly, not flattery, either. A statement, a truth. Clara blinked. "I believe one grows with time, my lord." "Time," he murmured, voice low. "Yes, time does much, and takes more than it gives." His gaze lingered on her. "I wonder if some things were taken too early." Clara's stomach twisted, the implication, unspoken but clear. He meant her, and the years she had silently cherished a love he may have never known. She steadied herself. "Some things are never truly lost," she said softly. Elias's gaze shifted, flaring briefly with something that unsettled her. Regret, longing, or perhaps a hint of pain. He turned back to the portrait, muttering under his breath, "Never truly lost." Clara felt a strange courage, a reckless, foolish courage, born from the long winter nights, and the faint hope Christmas always seemed to bring. "My lord," she said, stepping closer. "You carry burdens from your travels. You need not bear them alone here." He looked at her, truly looked, and for a moment, the world outside, the snow, the halls, the festive decorations, seemed to vanish. Only the two of them remained, separated by a few paces, yet closer than she had thought possible after years. "Do you forgive me?" he asked suddenly, voice hushed, raw. Clara's heart thundered. "Forgive you for leaving," he said. "For vanishing from your life without explanation." She drew a slow breath. The years of quiet longing, of hope tucked behind polite smiles, of nights imagining his return, it all converged into one delicate moment. I do not know what there is to forgive," she said. I thought perhaps you had reasons beyond my understanding." His eyes glimmered, a mixture of gratitude and pain. He stepped slightly closer, the warmth of him brushing against the chill of the library air. "I feared you would forget me," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "That you would move on, find joy elsewhere." Clara's chest tightened. She wished she could explain the years of silent devotion, the nights spent staring at snow-laden windows, wishing for him. Instead, she murmured, "I did not forget." A pause. The fire crackled, echoing their unspoken truths. Elias's shoulders slumped ever so slightly, the mask of the hardened nobleman slipping for a fraction. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the tall windows. A single flake pressed against the glass, catching the sunlight like a tiny crystal star. Clara could not help but see it as a sign, a fragile promise suspended in time. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his jaw easing. Then, perhaps winter brings more than frost. Perhaps it also brings reckoning. Clara's breath caught, reckoning, not just for him, but for her, for all the years lost, and for the tentative hope of a future that might still bloom. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder, cautiously, tremblingly, if this Christmas might be more than memory. If it might be the season where hearts long abandoned might finally find their way home. And somewhere deep inside, she felt it, a faint, daring ember of hope, flickering against the winter cold. The snow had begun in the night, falling softly, cloaking Winterfell Hall in pristine white. Each flake seemed deliberate, as if the world had conspired to pause, giving the Earl and Clara time they had both unknowingly craved. Clara awoke to the quiet, the hush of dawn magnified by the thick blanket of snow outside her window. The frost traced delicate lace along the glass, and she felt an inexplicable thrill. Perhaps it was the season, or perhaps the presence of Elias still lingering in her thoughts. Her morning routine was slower than usual. She wrapped herself in a woolen shawl, traced the corridors with a lantern in hand, and lingered by the windows that overlooked the gardens. The world beyond seemed untouched, silent, holding its breath. And then she heard it, the crunch of boots on snow. Elias. He emerged into the courtyard, hands in his coat pockets, scarf pulled close, eyes scanning the horizon. Clara's heart quickened, the ache of their unspoken past pressing like the winter chill. Summoning courage, she descended the staircase, wrapping herself in her cloak. Clara allowed herself a small smile. It seems the snow has invited many to wander today. He tilted his head, regarding her. There was a softness in his gaze now, a tentative warmth that had been absent in previous encounters. May I walk with you? The question hung in the crisp morning air, both an invitation and a test. Clara hesitated only briefly before nodding. Together, they stepped into the courtyard, boots crunching through fresh snow, their breath visible in the cold air. For a long while, they walked without speaking, the silence comfortable, almost sacred. Clara could feel his presence like a steady pulse beside her, and yet, the weight of everything unsaid, the years apart, the lingering feelings, the secrets of his travels, pressed quietly between them. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. I have seen many places, Miss Harrow. Cities, estates, foreign lands, and yet, none have felt as real, as alive, as this home. Clara glanced at him. Winterfell has always been more than a house. She replied softly. It holds memory, it holds people. He nodded, looking away. I left too much behind when I departed. I thought it necessary, but the void I left was heavier than I anticipated. Clara felt the old ache return, the hurt of years spent waiting for an explanation that never came. But she also sensed the honesty in his words, the vulnerability that only he could reveal to her. You were always honest in your way, she said carefully, even when you were absent. Elias's gaze met hers then, and for a moment, the wind seemed to still. I fear my honesty often comes too late, he admitted, and perhaps it comes too raw. Clara's fingers brushed a stray curl from her face. Better raw than never, she murmured. A pause, then he lowered his voice further, almost conspiratorial in its softness. Clara, do you remember the winter night beneath the arbor, when the frost had claimed the garden, and the stars were so bright, it seemed the sky itself was celebrating? Clara's heart skipped a beat. The memory was vivid, the warmth of candlelight on her face, the hushed laughter, the thrill of secrecy. I remember, she said, and I remember the feeling that the world had paused just for us. Elias's eyes darkened with something between longing and regret. I left too soon. I never told you. You never had the chance, she whispered, though the words were tinged with gentle reproach. He looked at her then, the snowflakes catching in his hair, the cold biting his cheeks, yet the warmth of his eyes remained. I had to leave, he said simply. Circumstances, duty, things beyond my control, but not a day passed when I did not think of you. And now returning, I find. He trailed off, words failing him. Clara's breath caught. The vulnerability in his tone was something she had longed to see. The man stripped of nobility and pretense, standing as he truly was. You find, she prompted gently, that some things may yet be reclaimed, he said finally. His voice was roughened by emotion, but steady. Some things I have missed, that I wish to make right. Clara's pulse raced. Could the past, so long buried in snow and silence, truly thaw? Could their hearts, so cautious and scarred, still recognize each other? For a moment, it felt as if the world had shrunk to only them, a universe of white and quiet, where confessions and revelations could unfold without interruption. Inside, the fire in the library crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. They stopped near it, still not quite close enough, yet too near to deny the pull between them. Clara, he said softly, there are things I must tell you, secrets that have shadowed me for years, things I could not speak of before. Her heart leapt. Then speak now, she urged. Let winter hear our truths. He took a measured breath, the weight of his past pressing into the room like the chill outside. And as he began to reveal the secrets that had followed him from distant lands, Clara realized this Christmas would not only bring snow and candlelight, it might bring revelations, redemption, and perhaps a chance to finally bridge the years they had lost. Outside, the snow fell heavier, a silent witness to the awakening of hearts, long separated by time, circumstance, and duty. And inside, the first fragile threads of love, long dormant, began to weave themselves into a tapestry that might endure beyond the frost. The evening had settled into a soft, serene quiet. Snow still fell, though lighter now, dusting the grounds of Winterfell Hall, with a sparkling powder that glimmered under the gas lamps. Clara lingered by the window in the drawing room, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, her mind replaying Elias's words from that morning. He had spoken of duty, distance, and the truths he had carried silently for years. Each confession was like a chisel, slowly carving away the wall she had built around her heart. And yet, despite the vulnerability he offered, a careful part of her remained guarded. She had learned long ago that hope could be cruel. A soft knock at the door startled her. "Clara, may I come in?" Elias's voice was hesitant, almost vulnerable, a tone she had not often heard. "Of course," she said, setting down her cup. Her heart stirred at the sight of him, framed by the flickering light from the corridor. He entered slowly, his coat dusted with the last remnants of snow, scarf now loosened, gloves in hand. "I hope I am not intruding," he said, his eyes taking in the warmth of the room, the golden candlelight, the way it reflected off her hair. "You are never intruding," she replied, her voice soft. For a moment, neither spoke, and the silence stretched, comforting yet charged with anticipation. Clara could sense the weight of his presence, feel the energy between them like a taut string, ready to hum with motion. Elias moved closer, though not too close, respecting some invisible boundary. "There is much I must explain," he began, "and I fear that words alone cannot undo the years, the misunderstandings, the distance I forced upon us." Clara nodded. "I am listening," she said gently. "Always." He took a deep breath. "When I left for London, for the continent, I believed it was necessary. My father, the estate, obligations that, well, they demanded a man's attention, but I did not account for the ache in leaving someone like you behind. For 7 years, Clara. 7 long, miserable years." Clara's pulse quickened, but she stayed silent, letting him speak. The raw honesty in his voice pulled at something deep within her, something she had tried to suppress for the sake of propriety, of dignity. "I kept letters from reaching you," he admitted, his voice low, almost a whisper. "I thought, perhaps it was better if you forgot me, moved on, found happiness elsewhere." But the truth, his gaze faltered, then met hers with unflinching intensity. "The truth is, I never stopped thinking of you. Never stopped." His confession hung in the air like delicate icicles, fragile, yet glimmering with undeniable sincerity. Clara's breath caught, and for the first time in years, the walls she had built around her heart trembled. "Elias," she whispered, the sound tentative, uncertain. "I thought you had abandoned me, forgotten me. Every Christmas, I would wonder if you remembered, if you ever thought of me." His hand lifted slightly, hesitating in the air between them. "Every Christmas, every winter night, every quiet moment, I thought of you, and I despised the distance I created, the silence I left in my wake." Clara's eyes glistened with emotion. She wanted to close the gap, to reach out and bridge the years, but the fear of being hurt again lingered. Yet, there was a warmth in the room now, a glow that had little to do with candlelight. "Then why return now?" she asked softly. "Why come back when the past has been so long buried?" Elias's gaze fell to the carpet, then back to her, and he took a step closer. "Because I could not bear another winter, another season, without attempting to make it right, without attempting you." The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning, yet delicate as the snow that still fell outside. Clara felt her chest tighten, the tumult of emotions, hope, longing, fear, desire, swirling inside her. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to the space between them, the flickering candlelight reflecting in his eyes. And then slowly, tentatively, he reached for her hand. His touch was gentle, reverent, as if she were made of the most fragile porcelain. Clara's breath hitched. She did not withdraw. The warmth of his hand, the steady pressure of his fingers, the undeniable sincerity in his eyes, it was a balm to the cold ache she had carried all these years. "I do not expect forgiveness," he said quietly, "nor do I presume to claim your heart immediately. I only ask for a chance to prove that what I feel is true and enduring." Clara swallowed hard, the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "And if I have held on to hope all these years?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Then," he said, a faint, almost shy smile tugging at his lips, "perhaps that hope can be shared, perhaps even nurtured together." The sound of the winter wind against the windows seemed distant now, muffled by the cocoon of warmth, candlelight, and newfound vulnerability. Clara's hand tightened slightly around his, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future, however uncertain. "Ilias," she whispered, her heart daring to leap. Perhaps we can try." A soft smile, genuine and relieved, spread across his face. "Then," he said, "we shall try, and let winter witness our beginning." Outside, the snow swirled around the hall like a quiet blessing, settling gently over footprints and hedges. Inside, a single candle flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls, shadows of hearts opening, walls crumbling, and the slow, delicate bloom of love beginning to thaw even the iciest of winters. And as the night deepened, Clara and Elias remained by the fire, hand in hand, speaking little, feeling much. Words were no longer necessary. Their hearts had begun the conversation that years of distance could not silence, and in the quiet intimacy of candlelight, a fragile, golden hope had taken root. "If you want, I can continue with part 5, escalating the tension, introducing a mystery element tied to Christmas intrigue, and deepening the slow-burn romance toward a near climactic revelation." The morning after their quiet confession dawned crisp and clear. Winterfell Hall was swathed in a dazzling blanket of snow, sunlight bouncing off the frost-laden branches of the estate gardens. Clara awoke to the delicate chirping of birds outside her window, her heart still humming with the warmth of last night's revelations. Yet, beneath the fragile comfort, a whisper of unease lingered. Elias had remained at her side until the small hours, the fire flickering low, their hands intertwined like silent pledges. And though she had felt a flutter of hope, she knew that the world beyond the hall carried complications, family obligations, whispered rumors, and secrets yet undisclosed. She dressed quietly, her fingers brushing the soft lace of her gown, and stole a glance at the hall beyond her window. Smoke rose in gentle spirals from the chimneys, curling into the pale winter sky. It was a serene, almost magical morning, yet Clara could not shake the feeling the day held more than simple snow and candlelight. The sound of horse hooves on the crisp drive drew her gaze. A carriage, ornate and unexpected, had arrived at the gates. Clara's heart gave an involuntary jolt. "Elias," she murmured under her breath, stepping toward the window. Elias appeared behind her, the morning light catching the sharp lines of his profile. "I see," he said softly, following her gaze. His expression hardened, a shadow briefly passing over the warmth in his eyes. "We were not expecting visitors." Clara's pulse quickened. "Do you know who they are?" He shook his head, his hand brushing against hers. "No, but I suspect their presence is not casual. Winterfell rarely receives unannounced guests." As the carriage doors opened, 2 figures emerged, a man in fine attire, bowing stiffly, and a young woman, elegant and deliberate in her movements, her eyes scanning the grounds with quiet determination. Clara felt a strange tension in her chest, a premonition she could neither name nor ignore. Elias stepped forward, his voice measured yet formal. "May I inquire as to the purpose of your visit?" The man spoke first, his tone polite, but carrying a subtle edge. "Earl Elias Winterfell, I presume. I am Lord Beaumont. This is my niece, Miss Lillian Beaumont. We have come regarding a matter of some delicacy." Clara noticed Elias's jaw tighten imperceptibly. "A matter of delicacy, you say? Pray enlighten me." Lord Beaumont's gaze flicked toward Clara, and Clara felt a sudden shiver of unease. The young woman, Lillian, studied her with eyes sharp as icicles, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. There was recognition there, or something resembling it. "Miss Hawthorne," Lillian began, her voice smooth, almost silk-like. "It seems that certain discrepancies regarding family estates and old agreements have come to light. Matters which require your attention, as well as that of the Earl." Clara's brow furrowed. "Discrepancies," she repeated. "I fear I do not understand." Elias's hand found hers, steadying her. "Do not worry, Clara. We shall address this together." His voice was calm, but the tight line of his mouth betrayed a deeper concern. The group was invited into the drawing room, the same space where Clara and Elias had shared their quiet, heartfelt confessions. The morning light fell through frosted panes, illuminating the tension that now mingled with the lingering warmth of last night's intimacy. Lord Beaumont's explanation was precise, deliberate, and unnervingly calculated. Some legal matter, long buried in paperwork, threatened the Winterfell estate's control over certain properties in the countryside. Lands crucial to the Earl's family legacy. Clara noted Elias's subtle glances at her, the unspoken plea for composure, the way his hand occasionally brushed against hers beneath the ornate table. Lillian, meanwhile, seemed less interested in the legalities and more in observing Clara. There was something in her gaze, a mixture of curiosity, assessment, and a faint challenge that unsettled Clara more than any snowstorm ever could. "Rest assured," Elias finally said, his voice a low rumble of command. "We will resolve this matter with discretion. Miss Hawthorne, your presence is appreciated, but I shall handle the principal negotiations." Clara nodded. Though her curiosity would not be silenced, she lingered near the window once the guests withdrew for private discussion with Elias, gazing out at the snow that glimmered like powdered diamonds. And yet, she could not shake the sense that the morning had brought more than mere paperwork. It had brought a subtle shift, a ripple of tension in the calm pond of their budding intimacy. Hours passed. Clara found herself wandering the corridors, the halls still carrying the faint fragrance of last night's candles. She paused by the library, recalling a memory of Elias reading to her by the hearth, his voice low, the cadence gentle. A letter lay upon the table, unopened. She picked it up, recognizing the handwriting, Lillian Beaumont. Her heart skipped. Curiosity warred with caution, but the pull of discovery was irresistible. She opened the envelope carefully, the paper crisp beneath her fingers. The note was brief, polite, but carried an edge of warning. "Miss Hawthorne, not all is as it seems. Be wary of appearances, for Winterfell hides truths that some would rather keep buried. The Earl is not alone in his burdens, and not all allies are known at first glance." Lillian Beaumont. Clara's breath caught. A shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from the sudden intrusion of uncertainty. Elias had been truthful, yes, but this note suggested a deeper layer, a secret hidden even from her. And in the midst of snow, warmth, and the fragile bloom of love, there now lingered a shadow of intrigue, something that threatened to test their hearts, their trust, and the tenuous hope they had just begun to nurture. When Elias returned, his expression was composed, though Clara could detect the faint tightness in his shoulders. He caught sight of her holding the letter, and she handed it to him without a word. He read it, his brow knitting, then looked at her, the storm of concern hidden behind his calm mask. "It seems," he said slowly, "that our winter has brought not only snow, but secrets long kept, and perhaps dangers we cannot yet foresee." Clara felt her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a strange exhilaration. This was not a story of simple reunion or courtly romance anymore. The snow, the hall, and the flickering candlelight had become the stage for a mystery, for trust tested, for hearts to prove their resilience. And as she looked into Elias's eyes, she understood that their journey together was far from over. Outside, the snow continued to fall, heavier now, blanketing Winterfell Hall in winter's hush. Inside, love and uncertainty entwined, delicate as frost on glass, waiting to be revealed in the coming days. The evening sky over Winterfell Hall had deepened to a rich indigo, and the first stars sparkled like scattered diamonds above the snow-laden grounds. Inside, the estate glowed with candlelight, the scent of pine and roasting chestnuts, mingling with the lingering fragrance of winter roses. Clara walked slowly through the hallways, her gown rustling softly against the polished floors, heart heavy yet resolute. She had spent the afternoon piecing together the subtle threads of Lillian Beaumont's warning. The estate's legal troubles were only the surface. Beneath lay old family tensions, secret debts, and a lingering scandal that threatened Elias's reputation. Yet, in spite of the looming shadows, a warmth radiated through her. Elias had never wavered, never faltered in his devotion, and she could feel the pulse of trust, steady and unwavering, between them. Elias found her in the library, where the last rays of sunlight spilled like molten gold over the bookshelves. He had removed his coat, revealing the crisp elegance of his evening attire, but his sleeves were rolled slightly, as if ready to confront both papers and peril. "Clara," he said, his voice low and urgent, "come sit. We must discuss our next steps, but I want you near me tonight, no matter the complications." She seated herself beside him, the fire's glow warming her fingers. Their hands met across the table, an unspoken tether binding them, even as the weight of Winterfell's secrets pressed in from every side. Lord Beaumont and Lillian had returned unexpectedly, bearing documents that revealed not only mismanaged estates, but hints of betrayal from distant relatives, eager to exploit the Earl's temporary absence. The intricacies of land rights, old debts, and contractual loopholes were difficult enough for even Elias's practiced mind. But Clara, inspired by both curiosity and concern, insisted on helping him. "Elias," she said softly, tracing the edge of a letter with her fingertip, "I may not know the law as you do, but perhaps we can approach this from a simpler perspective. What's fair, what's right, and what honors the Winterfell name?" Elias studied her, and for a fleeting moment the weight of responsibility seemed lighter. Her insight, her courage, and her willingness to face challenges at his side had become a quiet strength, one that rivaled any experienced counsel. "You are remarkable, Clara," he murmured. "If I did not know better, I would say Winterfell's fate is brighter for having you in it." Her cheeks warmed. She felt the stirrings of love, stronger now than any fear or doubt. Yet before the moment could deepen, Lillian's voice cut through the quiet, precise and poised. "Earl Winterfell, Miss Hawthorne," she began. "I must apologize for any discomfort my presence has caused, but I have uncovered the final piece that clarifies the entire matter." A hush fell. Even the crackle of the fire seemed to pause. Lillian laid a bundle of papers before Elias, a series of legal correspondences, carefully bound and signed by the distant relatives who had tried to manipulate the estate. "These letters," Lillian explained, "prove that all claims against Winterfell are null and void. You may rest assured that no deceit or dishonor remains to threaten your name or your holdings." Elias's gaze met Clara's, and in that shared look, relief washed over them both like sunlight breaking through clouds. The tension that had tightened Winterfell's walls for weeks melted away, leaving a clarity that was almost luminous. Clara felt a lightness in her chest. The trials, the secrets, the whispered threats, they were all behind them. And yet, there remained one truth that needed acknowledgement: their hearts. Elias stood, moving toward her with deliberate elegance, snowlight from the windows glinting across his shoulders. "Clara," he said, voice a low rumble of emotion. "These past days, this winter, has taught me that the only certainty worth holding is you." Her breath caught. The warmth of candlelight, the sparkle of frost outside, and the gentle resonance of his words created a moment suspended between time and eternity. He took her hands, raising them to his lips, and then, with a deliberate gesture that mingled reverence with desire, he pressed a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I know now," he whispered, "that no estate, no legacy, no secret is as vital as the promise I wish to make. To protect you, to cherish you, and to love you entirely." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, and a smile tugged at her lips. "Elias, He silenced her gently, placing a finger to her lips. "No words, my dear. Let us speak with hearts instead." And they did. A long, tender embrace, a silent understanding, the warmth of two hearts entwined against the cold of winter. The hall seemed to glow brighter, the candles flickering in approval. And outside, snow began to fall in gentle spirals, each flake a quiet testament to the miracle of the season. Later, as Winterfell's grand Christmas celebration began, the halls were alive with music, laughter, and the gentle clinking of crystal glasses. Clara walked beside Elias, their hands clasped, hearts aligned, and eyes reflecting the golden candlelight. No longer shadows of doubt, no longer secrets to fracture their trust, only the joy of being together, the serenity of love secured, and the magic of a wintry Christmas night. By the grand fireplace, they paused, and Elias lowered his head, pressing a tender kiss to her forehead. "Clara," he murmured, "I have found more than love this winter. I have found home, and it begins with you." Clara's heart swelled, a warmth that even the fiercest snowstorm could not chill. "And I with you, Elias," she replied softly. Always. Outside, the snow continued to blanket Winterfell Hall, serene and pure. Inside, love, trust, and hope radiated like the hearth's glow. A winter's promise kept, and a Christmas miracle born from hearts brave enough to risk everything. As the night deepened, the distant sound of church bells rang across the snowy estate, a gentle chime, marking both celebration and promise. And in that sound, Clara and Elias knew that their love, tested and true, would endure. Through every winter, every secret, every challenge, and every Christmas yet to come, Winterfell Hall, once a place of whispered tension and cautious hearts, now sang with warmth and laughter, love woven into its very walls, a testament to the power of courage, truth, and the slow, burn magic of romance.